Hey, Link here. Thanks for joining me for episode 123, where I speak with Ryan Ike. In this episode, we talk about what got them into the industry, getting to work on Frog Fractions 2, their guilty pleasure games, games that caught them off guard, games that made them want to work in the industry, their life outside of gaming, as well as some lightning round questions. Before we get started, don't forget there are links in the episode description that you can follow to learn more about Ryan as well as the podcast. Also, don't forget to like and share the episode, and without further ado, enjoy episode 123. Hi, and welcome to the Red Tunic Podcast, a podcast where I look to rediscover what makes gaming fun and enjoyable by having positive conversations with those related to the industry. My name is Link, and today I'm joined by composer Ryan Ike, who you might recognize from their contributions to games such as Shadows Over Loathing and Wizard with a Gun. Hi, Ryan, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Not great because I did literally just wave to the screen where we can't see each other, and this is an audio medium. So, intellect wise, I'm not so hot today, but otherwise, I'm in a good mood and I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Right, thank you so much for joining me for being here. Um, I I appreciate the enthusiasm to waving at the screen.
I wish I hadn't said that. I could have just said nothing, and now it's too late.
If it makes you feel any better, I am very much a hand talker as well. So I have, in many instances, and I'll probably do it while speaking with you, done a similar thing. So like you don't have to feel bad. I'll admit to it on my end as well. I've definitely uh gestured at the screen and then had a moment of going, there's no way that was caught, and then having to actively I don't know the right words, actively describe the gesture that I made, you know?
Yeah, you have to include the closed captions for your wild flailing. Let's just assume that we're both gesticulating 100% of the time while we're on the show, and then that'll make us both feel comfortable and on equal footing.
You know, that's actually pretty close to accurate for how I operate on a day-to-day basis. So, I'm 100%. Let's go with that. But no, Ryan, thank you so much for being here, for making time to let me steal your time and like bug you with some questions. Now, before we get started though, I am wondering if you would mind kind of like giving the elevator pitch to who you are, like the 411 or what have you, the things that you feel people should definitely know about you before we get started.
Sure. Again, my name's Ryan Ike. I'm a composer and occasional sound designer for video games. I mostly work in the indie part of the industry, and I've been doing that for professionally for over 12 years now. And like you mentioned, some of the games I've worked on, other things include Where the Water Tastes Like Wine and Frog Fractions 2, and a number of other things. And yeah, I'm also pretty passionate about public speaking. So when I'm not working on music for a project, I'm usually on a panel or giving a talk or something about usually trying to kind of help people who want to get started in the industry, whether they're in audio or in any kind of game industry related creative field. I still feel like even though there's more information than there's ever been, it's still a really weird esoteric, path into this space for people. It's not like as simple as just turn in a resume and get a job. It's always like you have to push a developer out of the way of a speeding train or something, or whatever, like get the Shikon jewel out of a volcano or what have you, something like weird like that to get a job. And I like to try to be as helpful as I can in helping kind of people figure out how to make their own space in this industry. So those are probably the two things. I don't know. I feel like for rule of threes, I should have a third thing. I'm super nearsighted. You can't see my face right now, but it looks like I have two Hubble telescope lenses on my head. Does that do anything for anybody? Do audiences like that level of detail?
So I cannot speak to that. However, I thank you for the elevator pitch. I do appreciate that. I also I like the noble idea of trying to help people figure out how to carve a space and get into the space. Given that you know the industry is the industry. I
Mhm.
don't, at the time of recording this and at the time of release for this, I don't think the industry is going to stop being the industry. So, I think any intention, any idea, any plan to help people uh, find their way into it and be be successful or happy or what have you, I think that's just a wonderful mindset. So thank you as well for working towards doing your part to try and make the industry, the space, a better place, if you know what I mean, if that makes sense. Sorry.
No, I appreciate that. I'm using all of my therapy muscles right now to not deflect all the compliments I'm getting. I'm pretty proud of myself for how quiet I'm being while you just say nice stuff about me. So I've come a long way from my Midwestern roots that demand that I can never have done anything good or worthy of note whatsoever. So thank you for
So
saying that.
you are welcome. Now I'm gonna give you something that you can, if you haven't used this before. I'm gonna give you this gun, and
Hit
you
me.
can annoy the hell out of your therapist night and day. The magic word that I used to acknowledge, and I didn't realize how bad it was deflecting until someone called me on it. But trying to acknowledge it and still deflect it was "Thank you for your kindness."
Oh, that
um,
sucks.
if you
That's
if you
that's really
if
specific. That's like a katana, the way that if you don't pay close enough attention to it, it feels like a genuine acceptance. And then you look at it in the right lighting, it's like, that person, they don't think they did anything good. They just double twisted it back on me. That's
Yes,
awful.
so, you use that, if you really wanna throw your therapist through a curveball and maybe make them go, "We have went back many months," just throw that out there casually as you're going through, some other things, and don't pause on it, just keep going, because that way they have to stop and go, "Wait, what?" And they get that nice whiplash as well as being in awe that you dropped that on them and just kept on chugging.
And it's important, like, the goal of therapy is to make them work for it. You know what I mean? I don't want them to have an easy path to just fixing me. Like, I want them to show that they, like, put the work in, that they were willing to solve my labyrinthine riddle master style puzzle that is my busted brain, and this is going to be a great tool in my tool belt for that. I have
You
therapy
are
tomorrow. I might use it and
oh,
just see what face she makes. She will see right through it instantly, but she will look very disappointed in me for a second.
you know, by the amount of people that have seen right through it with me, and called me on it. I don't know how many have seen right through it. I've had enough call me on it. Yeah, she's probably trained in that. So, yeah. Have fun with that one. Just don't pause on it for too long. It makes it more fun when you just keep chugging.
Yeah,
Um,
she's gonna make a disappointed face, and off screen she will be like drawing an asterisk next to my name in her notebook. I won't know what it means, but I will know it's there.
yes, exactly. Now, Ryan, as much as I would love to try and share how you can torment
How to
your
sabotage your own
therapist.
therapy session?
Yeah,
Yes.
sabotage the therapy that you are probably paying a lot of money for, let's be honest, therapy ain't cheap. Um, as much as I'd love to aid in that, I am more curious though, like, what got you into developing or working in the industry? Like, got you into doing composing, sound design, like, what have you? Like, what got you into doing that? The how, the why, and, like, at the same time, if you have any words of encouragement for others surrounding it, um, by all means, please, I'd love to hear that.
Sure. Uh, so I mean, typical of a lot of people, pretty much everybody who works in the industry, like video games have been a thing that I've always loved. I've always loved game music, even since I was a really little kid. You know, like playing my NES that I got when I was like 5 for Christmas, and you know, even before I was really conceptualizing somebody makes the music for this, you know, I was really into video game music, and I was very lucky and remain lucky to have supportive people. You know, both in my family and my wife currently, and just and friends, and all these people who have been very supportive of the thing I want to do. You know, that I didn't get the lottery payout where you end up with parents who are like, "You want to do what?" and like disown you the second that you talk about how you want to make noise for Crash Bandicoot or whatever. And so I'm very lucky in that. And when I was younger, the indie scene as it is now really didn't exist yet, and so there was like a countable number, essentially, of game composer jobs, and they were all taken. There was like, this is drastically underselling it, but there was like a couple hundred. It felt like, like they were all like, you could probably like find them all if you dug hard enough and be like, okay, they're all filled. Uh, and I was lucky enough to kind of break in during the like second big wave of indie games. If anybody remembers, like Super Meat Boy and kind of Braid, like the kind of what I think of as like the first kind of indie games in the what we consider like modern indie game kind of part of the industry. I know there were indie games before that, but that's what I mean, like the modern stuff. Kind of the wave that came after that was a game called Gunpoint, and the developer reached out on social media and was like, people should try out for this, which is an unusual way to do that. If you don't work in the industry, that's not a common way that people find a composer. But he posted footage and was like, everybody who would like to, please write music to this footage. I will pick the ones that I like the best and then hire you on. And I just kind of ended up doing it as an exercise because I have a red stripe triple black belt in not believing in myself. And so I was like, there's no way I'm going to get this. The composer from Minecraft at the time was applying for it. I was like, I'm toast. So I'm just going to do it and see how, see what I can come up with, assuming that I'm not going to get it. And I'm very fortunate that the developer, Tom Francis, is the kind of person who picked the music that he liked the best, and I'm very, very fortunate that that ended up being mine because even to this day, trying to not be too Minnesotan to like make myself small on purpose about it. There were definitely submissions that I just think were way better than mine. But he picked the one he liked the best when nobody would have blamed him if he wanted to pick the high profile composers who were applying that, might have lent some validity to his first project. And so I was very lucky to land that. That game went on to do very well, which is also extremely fortunate. That's not usually what happens. Your first project that kind of makes it all the way to fruition in this industry is usually not something that blows up the way that did. And I don't think it could have blown up the way it did today in the modern, like 2025 indie space, because there are just so many more games. But yeah, that was my first thing. And I'm still very, very grateful and very, very lucky. And that's sort of a big part of why I do, on top of just liking it, why I try to do the public speaking stuff I do and try to kind of, do my whatever my attempt at mentoring is and offering advice to people when they want it, because I lucked out pretty hard on things lining up for me getting into this space, and I want to try to do what I can to ease that for other folks. And as for advice, I would say definitely, if you can, surround yourself with people who support you. And if you don't have those people in your family or in your friend group, try to find them and maybe try to at least not share the game industry aspiring part of you with the people who don't support you, because having people who support you getting into this really unlikely space that you can achieve, finding a job in, but it's hard. Having people who support that is a really big part of it. And then the other side of that coin that's kind of related, I would just say, is meet as many people in the industry as you possibly can, whether that's online or especially in person. If you don't live anywhere near a game industry hub, which most people don't, you can try to go to annual conventions like GDC or PAX or, Indiecade or anything like that, or you can just find local stuff, or you can find people online. But anybody you can meet in the game industry, even if they can't hire you, even if they do the same job that you want to do and they feel like they'd be your competition, like the more people you know, the more of those weird random lucky breaks you end up finding, and the higher your chances are.
So thank you for sharing that and speaking to that. I always like the idea of networking, and I always like uh, the explained way of networking, of basically just go and meet people and see what happens. Um, because, and I don't say this disparagingly against anyone that's been on the show. It's just one of those things in life where when someone says, "Oh, you need to do more networking," it's always such this like vague thing of like, "Oh, networking, yes, networking." It's the
Yeah.
networking, right? It's like, what is networking? Well, it's networking. It's like, okay. And I always appreciate when, and this is like in professional and private, everything kind of life, when someone's like, go out there, meet people. Who cares if nothing comes of it? Just meet some people and see what happens. And maybe something will come of it, maybe something fun, maybe something cool, whatever, 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 right? But like I like when networking is described in that way. So thank you for that because it's, I think that's just a much a much easier way for people like me that are borderline idiots to understand what networking really is.
I mean,
Because like
that word sucks too. Like we can both agree like networking is like one of the 12 most boring words on the planet, and it every time someone's like you just need to network more, it sounds like you need to plug in your ethernet cable. Like what are you talking about? So like meeting people and making friends, which is literally what it is in the game industry. I know not every industry works that way, but like the game industry, people literally do just hire people that they like, which has its own problematic element to it. But like just making friends is all it is. And I'm not saying that's easy. It's terrifying, but it's way more fun eventually the more you try it than like trying to like stiffly hand a pile of like sweaty business cards like some people on this podcast definitely did their first couple months in the space. I don't want to name names, but I did find a stack of my own business cards on top of a urinal at GDC once, and I didn't put them there.
oh
So that
Jesus.
that was a blow to the old self-esteem. We learned some lessons from that early on. They were wet rectangles by then. I did not retrieve them.
Oh geez. I'm as so man, there's so many places to go with that. Yes, to quickly just bounce off of the topic of networking, it sounds like something Patrick Bateman's would do. Like
100%.
that's when I hear networking, I just think of Patrick Bateman. Them um, uh, really stroking their egos over nonsensically different um, uh, 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 business cards. Sorry, my brain went silent on business cards.
You were thinking of
And
the
that's
urinal thing. I get it.
Yeah, I was struggling. And that's from someone that has a degree in design, right? Like I get it, but also, come on.
A
But
typeface is important, but like that dude needs to settle down.
they all need to. Um, but also as someone that has handed out business cards at PAX, um, the 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 very real self-conscious fear of, these are probably going in the garbage. Um, I that's a very different self-conscious fear to be like, no, these could end up in the urinal. That's worse than the garbage.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
thank
You
you for that
should
fear.
you should yearn for it. Just look down on me on the big stretched out JPEG of my face below you, anybody who's new to the industry and scared to network, and be like, if you're afraid they're gonna throw your business card away, like you should be overjoyed if it makes it to the garbage. The garbage is probably
Yes.
dry. It's not in a men's bathroom. Like there's way lower floors than the garbage. You're doing great if they just throw it away. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. So thank you for that weird fear, but also that weird um bar on the floor for everyone. Well,
I'm an inspiration, is what you're probably
yes,
trying to say.
yes. You're inspirational. Um, Now, Ryan, I want to ask this just because you mentioned the first chance, lucky break, what have you, however you'd like to phrase it. So don't mind the paraphrasing for Gunpoint. And I'm wondering, and I know I said before we started recording that I typically am not a fan of talking shop. However, I'm a liar. Um, I'm curious
Very good.
how you feel about going your big your first big game or what have you being Gunpoint, and then years later being a part of what effectively was the long-awaited sequel, Frog Fractions 2. Now, Glittermitten Grove, like not to throw that to the side. I personally played Glittermitten Grove and enjoyed it for what it was, and then like
Sure.
a year later, someone was like, "Hey, this is actually Frog Fractions 2. Um, it's been here the whole time," kind of thing. Um, I'm wondering how did that feel? Because for anyone that's unaware of what Frog Fractions is, it was the game that was hidden inside of another game that just kept on going and going. and going. And in the same way, Frog Fractions 2 was the exact same thing. And it was one of those things where people literally for years were trying to find Frog Fractions 2 or Frog Fractions 3, thinking they might have missed 2, and it was this big, fun secret. Um, but, like, you got to work on the big, fun secret. I'm wondering, how did that feel?
It was bewildering. It was also extremely fun because I'd never been part of a game that was like a meme in the specific way that that was. So for anybody who is never played Frog Fractions, first of all, the first one, which I did not work on, is great, and you can just play it in your browser for free right now. And you should know as little about it before you go into it. But the second one, yeah, we hid it. The developer, Jim Stormdancer, hid it inside of another video game that was also an entire game all its own, Glittermitten Grove. It was just hidden in there, like you mentioned. And there was a meme for like years about like, is this Frog Fractions 2? Is this Frog Fractions 2? And it could be anything, you know. And one of my favorite things to do at conventions was like when people would see me and be like, "Hey, you're working on Frog Fractions 2, right?" I'd look confused and be like, "You mean 3?" And they'd be like, "What?" And I would just kind of like whisper like, "You missed it," and then just kind of try to like enact an air of mystery in a way that I'm not capable of. But it was it's still one of the weirder things that I've worked on, and also one of my favorite things I've worked on because not only did I get to write all the music for Glittermitten Grove and do this kind of very like ethereal, kind of magical, like Feywild kind of soundtrack for that I really enjoyed doing. The music I got to do for Frog Fractions 2 is bananas. The stuff that Jim would ask for sounded like he had a gas leak at his house all the time, but he was serious. Like, I need you to write music for a mini game where you're a roommate and you're trying to get your roommate to move out so you can keep the deposit, but your roommate is a xenomorph from Alien. And I was like, okay. And then it was like, I need you to make music for like a mini game where it's like, it's chess, but it's also Final Fantasy VI, and it's also kind of Tron. And I was like, all right. And it was so fun. My favorite thing, like musically, is when I get to do a genre or a style or do something musical that I've never done before. I'm not somebody who really loves to just hang out in one comfort genre, even though I've done a lot of like Western stuff by now. That's just kind of the way that my career is shaking out. I like getting to do new things, and this game was great because I got to do new thing after new thing after new weird, bonkers, buck wild thing. And I'm still really grateful to it for that.
So thank you for speaking to that. And I also like the invocation or invocation, whatever, however that's pronounced. That you had to sit there every couple of requests being like, I don't know if we should be like, is the CO2 leaking? Like, are you leaving notes to yourself when you are present? Like, can do both your
Yeah.
arms go above your head? Can you stick your tongue out? Like, I like the idea that there was the air of, is this man in danger or is he just a crazy genius? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Is he legally sane? And the answer is no. And that's why the game is so good.
I would assume yes. Now I have to admit I haven't made it far in Frog Fractions 2 because it's a bonkers game and it I got started to it and I made it to degrees. I don't know how many. It's been many years too. But like that's always just been one of those wonderful things in my head is just knowing that like that existed and it took so long to be found and it was just the nonsense of it. So like thank you for speaking to that. And that this is the part where I now stop being a liar and don't try and bug you about shop as much. Um Now, I am curious about this because before we started, you said you wanted to talk about this, and I would absolutely be remiss if I did not bug you about this and make sure I did. So I'm curious, what are your guilty pleasure games?
So I struggled with the idea. So like first of all, if you're not confident about the things you enjoy, anything can be a guilty pleasure game, you know? If you're embarrassed to play it, even if it's like, you know, Call of Duty, that's a guilty pleasure. But for me, my guilty pleasure game is kind of cheating because it's also some of my favorite stuff. in the medium. It's anything by Hideo Kojima, especially the Metal Gear Solid series. I know tons of people love those. I know they're not a guilty pleasure in that way, but the reason they're a guilty pleasure for me is because I'm a huge Hideo Kojima fan. I'm a huge nerd for all of his stuff, and I don't fully know why that is, because he does things constantly that if any other director did them, I they would make me insane. Like, I'm a huge hypocrite when I play his stuff. He's like my complete, like, just let me have this like creator. Like, everybody gets one, I feel like, where you're just like, don't question me about this. Don't interrogate my values. Okay. I'm not saying that this person is without flaws or that their work is without flaws, because it isn't. It's just like, something about how specifically weird and dorky and talented and surprising his projects are is the thing for me. And I think the thing that makes it a guilty pleasure is that, like, if, you know, when Kojima is like, you're playing video games because you want to interact with this story, I want you to sit there for 47 minutes while this insecure guy talks to his like android or whatever. Uh, I'm like clapping like an ape. I'm having the best time. If David Cage tried to do that to me, I'd be on his lawn with a sign and a pitchfork, like yelling in his windows, like, "Get out of here, David! Wasting my time!" Like, I'm a huge hypocrite. It's just something about this one guy, the specific weirdness of him asking you to watch an hour-long cutscene, a thing I don't particularly enjoy doing. I'm here for it when he does it. You know, if another game was like one of the main antagonists in the game is a bunch of robots that moo and they have like sexy legs, I'd be like, well, that's pretty stupid. But when Kojima does it, I'm like, that's pretty stupid. But again, I'm clapping like an ape. Imagine. So yeah, I think those are probably my biggest guilty pleasure. I know they are beloved. I know they are famous. I know they're not like a secret thing I would hide in the attic, but they are guilty pleasures to me because I can't defend myself, you know? Like, if another game is like, you know, hey, we have one female character and her name is Quiet and she doesn't talk and she wears a bikini top. What do you think of that? I'd be like, that sucks, man. And when Kojima does it, I don't think it's good. It's just like it gets a pass for some reason. I'm not sitting there like, this is wonderful. This is feminism to me. I'm sitting like, I don't love this. But I still am here for the stupidity of the whole experience. If that makes sense. So yeah, everything that dude makes is guilty pleasure time for me. I'm hooting and hollering like a seal the entire time.
So thank you for speaking to that. Um, you know, uh, as someone who is not a fan of Kojima, for the reasons that you actually stated for why you like him,
Oh
I
yeah,
appreciate that you out front are just like, no, if this was anyone else, I would be my pitchfork and my torch, and I'd be on their lawn. And I'm not saying that with shade against you. I'm just saying I appreciate that
it
you
can be
are out in
shade.
the open about it.
Blasphemy. Like, this is the thing is like everybody who I've ever heard level criticisms against Kojima's stuff, I'm like right there with you nodding like, that's right. Yeah, he sucks at that. Like, I'm not here to like blindly defend any of it. Like, a lot of his female characters are really bad depictions of women. A lot of the gameplay is like ponderous and weird. Like, Death Stranding is super boring on purpose. And I love that game. But like anybody who's like, God, I can't stand Kojima, and then they list the reasons, I'm just like nodding the whole time, like, yep, that's right. He does all that stuff, and if anyone else did it, I would be furious or bored out of my mind. But for some reason, I have like a bowl-shaped brain, and his particular brand of weird content fits directly in the bowl. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes, I know exactly what you mean. Again, I just appreciate the you being out front and open about the acknowledgement of it. Again, that's not throwing shade at you or anyone that enjoys Kojima games. It's just I I really struggle, and it's I've never spoken to someone where they are open about that. I've most people tell me that I'm crazy. I don't enjoy art or whatever, and I'm like,
No,
okay, like I
you're
don't
quite normal.
I don't know.
There's a chemical in Death Stranding called lycocin that you give to other people by giving them likes, like on social media, but it's an actual like brain chemical that goes into you and like gives you pheromones from getting like a thumbs up. So I'm not smart for like for liking these, and hence guilty pleasure. I'm not even that guilty about it, but I'm aware of how flawed all of this is. It's just they're beautiful flaws to me that fit together for some reason in a way that they normally don't.
I will say, I will say is like kind of what you said. I appreciate that he just does the thing that he wants
Just
to
does the
do,
thing.
as nonsense, as crazy, um as much of a uh poster child for no, I don't think drugs are really that hard to get in Japan as he is. um I appreciate him on the artistic level of that, about what he presents, how it's his vision. I just question his vision most of the
Fair.
time, but
Completely fair.
um but at the same time as well, before Death Stranding came out, I said, unironically, because no one knew what the hell this game was going to be, unironically, I was saying, I would love the idea if the entire thing is just you walking from point A to point B, and if you play it properly, you never even have to enter combat. And I said that, and people are like, "Oh, you're crazy. This man made Metal Gear. There's going to be this. There's going to be that." And then, like 2 years later, after it comes out, it's like you can play this game without having any combat, and you literally
Yep.
just you're a postal man, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I should not have been that close with my unironic statements. Like,
Spot
it should
on. In
not have
fact,
been that accurate.
yeah.
Um,
It's
but
carrying too many grocery bags in from the car at once simulator if you want it to be.
which is fantastic, to be honest. Like there's nothing you haven't lived until you are rushing up the stairs in an apartment as that plastic bag is slowly ripping in your hand, and you're
Hmm.
like,
And there's
this is hell.
nothing but wet stuff in there too. You know it's gonna be bad.
Exactly.
The
You're like
adrenaline.
you're hovering the bag like an inch over the floor, so that way if it does rip, like the chicken doesn't just fall splat, shoot out the side and get ruined. So yes,
See?
it's yeah.
You sound
Um
like more of a Kojima fan than you seem to believe, actually. It sounds like you get it.
to a degree I do, but there's usually a line that I hit and I'm like, okay, I gotta walk away. Um Now, Ryan, I'm also curious because, like, on the topic of guilty pleasures, and I'm not gonna lie, I honestly thought you were going to say something that was actually like a guilty pleasure. And I don't mean that, in a negative way to what you just said. I thought you were just gonna be like, I really enjoy those weird puzzle clicker H games or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Um
huge cookie clicker head over here, you
Yeah,
know?
that wasn't a personal statement. I was just preparing. I was bracing myself for oh, okay, this is gonna be a fun one. In that sense, like going down that crazy path. But I am curious because that's where my brain has went. I'm wondering, um, are there any games that you have surprised you the most, like that you've enjoyed, that you went into going, "Ah, I'm not gonna like this," and it caught you off guard and you surprised, like the surprise of it, you liked the surprise of it so much or what have you?
Yeah, actually, the biggest one for me happened in the last year and a half, and it was Street Fighter 6. I've never been I'm 40 years old. I've never been a fighting games person. I've tried several times throughout my life to get into them, and I always bounce off. And to the point where I'm like, I'm aggressively average at video games. I'm good at some, I'm bad at others, but I'm like, I don't have the thing. Whatever the gene is that you got to have to like make your hands do the stuff to be good at these, I don't have it, and that's fine. And then enough of my friends, I have a couple friends who are into fighting games, and they picked up Street Fighter 6. I was like, I'm just gonna get it because it's fun to play anything with people that you like, and I'll just hit buttons. And something about it, like it clicked. It just made enough sense, and they had this new like modern control scheme that I know other games have done, but they introduced this new control scheme that simplifies things a little bit, but still lets you be competitive. And I have spent the last year and a half like getting really into it. I got my main character to master rank, which For people who play that game a ton, that's maybe not that impressive, but that was the thing that like I did not think I'd be able to do. And now I'm over here like eyeing, like Tekken and like the new Marvel fighting game that's coming out and stuff. And it's wild to have, at 40 like a entire genre of game where I was just like, this isn't for me, and that's cool. Go with God, everybody who likes these, and have that open up and be like, oh no, I get it now. I'm not incredible at it, but I'm way better than I ever thought I would have been able to get. And that's kind of exciting. It's not finding a new thing that I can be good at, even if it's just a video game, is not a thing that happens to me very often. So, yeah, that's definitely probably the big one. It sucks too because talking to people who don't play them about your experience with a fighting game is like telling somebody about some stupid dream you had. Like I saw Mark at the grocery store and his face was like weird. You know what I mean? And everybody's like falling asleep. Like it's the same thing with this. I can't be like, I did a crouching medium kick into drive rush cancel that would have blown your face off. Like nobody cares. So it's like really hard to talk about them with anybody. But I'm surprised that it has had the longevity for me that it's had, and I'm excited to try other ones.
So I'm happy to hear that. For as someone that is very relatable in the sense of um, not feeling that your hands want to do the thing you think they should be doing, um, that speaks to me in the sense of like how you found this and you were able to get your hands to do the thing. For me personally, it's trying to get the shoulder buttons. Sometimes my brain hot wires and my fingers just refuse to do the two shoulder buttons at the same time, like R1 and L1.
It's too much to
Or sorry,
ask.
R1 and R2.
Absurd
Um,
amount of buttons.
it kind of is sometimes. But like what I'm meaning is like I know what you mean. I've been there. I've had the moment of going, my fingers don't want to do this. Please don't make me mash this button while
Yeah.
holding this and all
Have I
this
ever used a
nonsense.
controller before? It's like I'm supposed to manipulate this object that I use all the time, and all of a sudden it's like, and an extra layer of frustration for me was that I'm a huge klutz. I drop things, I fall down. I'm not the most dexterous person, but I'm a lifelong piano player. I have supposedly a lot of finger dexterity, at least when it comes to that, and you would think some of it would transfer, and it wicked did not transfer, but. I will say this is going to sound like so aggravating to some people, but it is really true for me. Is how much crossover there was between practicing an instrument and practicing Street Fighter. I know it sounds really lame, but like it is true that like if I'm trying to learn a really difficult passage on piano, I will break it down smaller and smaller and smaller until it's like the tiniest. I'm just doing 3 notes and then eventually 5 notes and then 10 and then a measure. And that's just kind of practicing a combo. Like I would look at this huge, crazy 10-hit thing and be like, I can't do this. I can barely do any of it. And just, having the patience to break it down and be like, just do the first part of it. And then the first move into the second move and do that until it's good. And like, it sounds so dumb, but a lot of my life of practicing an instrument kind of trained me for, at least for me, how much practicing a fighting game is like that.
So thank you for sharing that. I'm happy to hear that you found a way to kind of like connect the dots or um synapses or what have you for to make that work or make it easier.
I'm
Um
also on a
just
lot
because
of
like
performance enhancers for it. Like black market stuff, that like I probably shouldn't talk about on the show to be honest, but like weird dark
it
web
puts
stuff. Don't worry about it.
Lance Armstrong to shame, right?
Yeah, he wishes he had my wide veins ready to accept all manner of chemicals.
He wishes he had that gauge. Uh, so Ryan, to prevent you from saying anything potentially more incriminating, I feel I should ask you something different. Get us off of this topic before the Uncle Sam is banging down your door to throw you to the performance enhancement mines or what have you.
Mhm.
Um, I'm wondering, was there a game or a set of games that you played and you were like, this is the thing that I want to do? I know earlier you mentioned, the idea of, and I'm paraphrasing probably horribly, but like realizing that, oh, this is something you can do. This is something people can do. I'm wondering if there was a specific game that made you go, "Oh, hey, this is something people do, and I can maybe do this."
100%. And I know I'm not at all unique in it being a Final Fantasy game that did this for me, but my specific one was the super janky, barely functional PC port in the classic like 90s like giant cereal box size box that they came in back then. God knows why, of Final Fantasy VIII, which was my first Final Fantasy game. I didn't have a PlayStation as a kid, so I played it on my dad's like work computer, which barely ran it. Um, and I'm not saying I hadn't played games with great music before or that didn't do, like thematic structuring and like, narrative, kind of tie-ins and construction with their soundtracks. But Final Fantasy VIII is the first one where I really noticed it. I was probably like 13 when I played that, and it just blew me away. Like, it was the first game I played that had really obvious, not just like level themes or themes for different activities, but like themes and leitmotifs for specific characters, and you would see the themes of multiple characters like intertwine and be written over each other in harmony when those characters are having a conversation. You would see themes change and kind of shift and grow like darker if a character was in trouble or was succumbing to some sort of evil force. There was just so much in there that was connecting music to the actual telling of a at the time for me, like a more complex story than I had seen in a lot of like the kind of, NES games I had played up till then. And it was definitely it is the thing I cite as like the big wake up call for me, where I was like, oh, like this isn't just, making music that's good and catchy, which I already appreciated. This is like a key component in telling a story, every bit as much as writing music for film. And then the other thing I love about it is just I'm a very melodic composer, I think, meaning that I tend to kind of focus on like a lot of my writing. The thing I structure everything around is like, what is a really catchy tune? What is a melody that's going to get stuck in people's heads? That's the thing I used to feel bad about that. Like, shouldn't I want to do something more complex? But it's like, no, I love that feeling of I can't get a song out of my head from a game that I played because it is that lodged into my brain and I want to do that to other people. And Final Fantasy VIII is like wall to wall those. I mean, of course it is. It's a Final Fantasy game. It's Uematsu. He can do whatever he wants. But that game for me, like there are so many memorable melodies in there, and it was a good like kind of early sort of formative game for me to play to realize like, oh, this is totally a valid way of doing this. This is not, a lesser way of composing for games. This is in fact one of, the most beloved composers on one of the most beloved series of all time, just cranking out banger after banger, like earworm, and that's what I want to do.
So, thank you for speaking to that. And sorry, I'm laughing because the idea and it was Final Fantasy VIII. Now,
Get it out of your
uh,
system.
in
Everybody
full
laughs at
well,
me for that.
no, look, here's the thing. Here's the thing, and I'm gonna be very honest. Final Fantasy VIII, what I owned it for PC as well. I got it from Costco when Costco used to sell computer games. Um, so like I played Final Fantasy VIII. I still have the discs sitting downstairs on a shelf. But it's the whenever anyone talks favorably for Final Fantasy VIII, I always have to laugh because it's one of those things where it's like, yes, it had a hilariously complex, nuanced system that was really deep and could be really fun. However, everything else, well, everything else, mechanic wise or what have you, just spit in the face of this genius thing.
Out of
Um,
control, yeah.
and like, yeah, it made it like, how many games do you play where your entire goal, your optimal goal is to be under level 20. So that way, when you're doing things, the enemies actually can die, right? Grinding is actually punishes you. You're like, "Oh, I made it to level 99." It's like, "Oh, cool. So you spent 3 hours on the final boss then because it had, like, a brilliant amount of health?" Like, I
Yeah,
laugh at Final Fantasy VIII just because it's one of those games that I fondly remember, and at the same time, I'm more than happy to talk fondly about it, but it's just like it's
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 super
always
weird.
funny because it's
Some
like,
odd choices made.
yes, and it's kind of like, what is it? commiserating with misery or whatever, right? Like you know that you're gonna say it, someone's gonna laugh at you, but at the same time, there's gonna be someone that's going to feel your pain and respect it, and also
100%.
speak just as fondly of the game, but be like, yeah, that game was something. That was nuts.
Oh, I lodged myself like deep deep in a quarry that I could not get out of on that one because I it was my first Final Fantasy again. I'm like 12 or whatever, and oh my god, you can summon. This is so cool. You can call down these like giant monsters from the sky, like Quetzalcoatl and stuff. Like this rules. And so I just did that every battle. Like I'm fighting like two giant mosquitoes, and I was like, get Quetzalcoatled. And I did that so much that not realizing that you don't earn the same XP, you don't really grow your actual characters doing that. That I made it like a significant way into the game, and so I was both insanely underleveled and could not progress in a game that also requires you to not overlevel. And I think I had to start over. I got like off the first disc and I basically just like torched my entire playthrough doing that, and I had to start over. So it's not perfect. The leveling thing is super weird. It's like I'm gonna work out. I'm gonna work out. I'm gonna get in shape, and you go to the gym and you actually succeed at getting like super ripped and like lifting a lot of weights, and then the gym owner comes up to you and he's like, what, you think you're better than me? And then like raises your membership fee or something. It's like, why did you guys do this? But my barometer's all screwed up because everybody loves their first Final Fantasy. I know eight's not most people's favorite. Okay, I get it, but I love it very much, and not just because I was 12 when I played it, and a gun stapled to a sword is a thing that a 12-year-old boy is like right in the pocket to think is cool as hell. But my barometer's all messed up because it was my first one, and so see all of the critiques people have of it. It's the same thing with Kojima. I'm not here to defend it. I'm like, yep, that's busted, that's silly. But it was my first one, so like I feel like it wallpapers over a lot of that stuff for me. It's there, but it just doesn't bother me because it was my entry point, and the soundtrack means so much to me that it's just kind of like. Also, on the flip side of that coin, I'm never going to go back and replay it. It's just going to live in my brain perfect the way it was. And by the way it was the janky PC port where I literally my dad's computer could not run the final cutscene. So I did not find out what happened at the end of that game until YouTube existed because I couldn't get through it. So that's the way it lives in my memory. And it's going to stay that way. No matter how many times Square Enix wants to re-release it, I ain't touching it. It's fine the way it was, as far as I remember, which is not well.
So I'm glad that you understand what I was saying. And I think anyone that also enjoys Final Fantasy VIII or enjoyed the memory of Final Fantasy VIII can easily relate to everything that was just said.
Yeah.
Um,
We could start a support group. We're all siblings in that god awful leveling system.
Look, let's be honest. The whole support group's just going to be everyone asking if we've heard about the Squall is dead theory and nothing else. Nothing else. It'll just be hours upon hours. Every time someone new joins, it'll just be the seagulls from Finding Nemo screaming mine. Right? It'll just be that over and over and over. But Ryan, I do want to start moving you towards the door because it's I've taken almost an hour of your time, and I like to not steal more than I like to at least pretend that I'm giving you the ability to walk away and go make dinner and you know relax for your evening. But before I do that, I have to ask a few more questions, and one of them is outside of games, outside of like playing games, working on games, what have you, what is it that you do enjoy doing? What do you do to relax? And by all means, I'm not going to throw any shade if the answer is, well, it's just more games. Because, I play games too. Everyone plays games, right? So like I'm not gonna give you a side eye for that one, but I like to ask all the same and give you the chance to talk about other hobbies and things that you enjoy doing.
Sure. Yeah, I do a lot of disassociating, a lot of just kind of, you know, staring into the corner and thinking about all of everything I've ever said wrong to anybody in my entire life since like third grade onward. That's a big pastime of mine. When I'm not doing that, My big kind of non-gaming hobby is cooking. I'm not like incredible at it, but I really love the act of like, you know, caring about making food, especially for, for my wife or for people I care about. Which is really telling. Like the way that I cook for just me when my wife's out of town at a work conference or something is very different than the way that I cook most nights when I'm making dinner for the two of us. But it's a thing I really like doing, and while I'm not amazing at it, I am getting better all the time, I think. And I have a couple bangers that people in my life have said, requested repeatedly, like my cast iron pizza is pretty dang good, if I do say so. And then yeah, otherwise, my wife and I love to travel. We're going to we just got back from New York, and then we're going to Germany in a couple months. Pretty stoked about that. And then, not to be a bummer, but we're both huge dog people. Love dogs very much. We don't have any dogs at the moment because ours passed away a couple months ago, but we will again someday when we're feeling ready. And like getting outside and getting out into nature with dogs is probably one of the most relaxing things I can think of. Especially because gaming as a hobby is because the stupid games that I choose to play isn't the most relaxing hobby in the world. I tend to hang out in the Dark Souls and Hollow Knight sphere and fighting games, as I mentioned these days. And so like I, for some reason, have piled a bunch of incredibly intricate, technical, stressful homework onto myself when it comes to video games. So getting outside with dogs and working on like learning new recipes and stuff is probably like the relaxing part of my hobby life.
So thank you for sharing that, and my condolences to the your lost dog.
I think you.
Sorry, I don't know the right way to phrase that, so my apologies
No,
on
you nailed it.
on that. But I hope when you guys are ready that you are able to find a dog that you enjoy. Sorry, I don't have a dog, so I don't know how to phrase these things. But I hope when you're ready that it is a good dog that you get to make memories with, and share a life with.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we're doing our what my wife and I are calling our year of woe, which is like doing all of the things while we're sad that we can't normally do when we have a dog. Like there's, like Mount Rainier National Park out here near Seattle is supposed to be really gorgeous. It's one of the few like state parks that doesn't allow dogs, so we never went. Some travel is even if you get a dog sitter, kind of harder to do when you have a dog. So we're making the most of the awful bad feels and trying to at least do a year of like doing the things that are hard to do when you have a pet. And then when it's time, like we're just gonna know. If you're a pet person, you know how it is when you find the right one. You just know, and it's I'm confident it will happen again. But we're taking some space, so I appreciate that.
And as well, I'm curious. You mentioned cast iron pizza. What is your other kind of go-to banger? If
I've got a couple things that I'm pretty decent at. I do. This feels like cheating because like everybody likes it if you eat meat anyway. But I do a really good fried chicken. Um, like a recipe I've been like slowly adding and like tweaking things to for a couple years. That one gets requested a lot. And then recently I started doing like the food carts in New York that have like the halal, like the yellow rice with like chicken and like white sauce and veggies and stuff on top of it. Um, I do a version of that I originally stole from. It's just the Serious Eats recipe, but I've been not that I am better than the professional chefs who made that recipe, but I've been kind of like slowly adding and tweaking things to that and kind of making it our own thing. And like that one is pretty good as well. I also do a good like crispy salmon rice bowl with like crispy kind of chunks of fish, and then like you toast the rice up in some butter so it gets kind of like nice and crunchy and like a little more like nutty flavor, and then you can kind of just mix in whatever veggies and stuff you want. So yeah, I've got a couple things that are like pretty decent, and then my problem is I've always been one of those people who follows recipes to learn, but like struggles with like the fundamentals. Like anybody can follow a recipe, but then when it's like, well, what if you put too much salt in something? How do you fix that? And I'm like, And then it's like, well, what does an acid do to a food? And I'm like, And so that's that's kind of the big thing I'm working on right now is like actually learning the kind of science and mechanics of like stop just following recipes because clearly that's not teaching me that stuff, and actually like find ways to learn like what are the things that balance good food, and how can you kind of freestyle those instead of always following instructions to learn.
So I will say best of luck with that journey. I don't say that dismissingly. Um, I just the best of luck with that journey as someone who has learned the hard way a few times, being like, "Well, what happens if I do this?" and quickly learning nothing good happens if I do this. I wish you the best of luck in learning those same lessons, probably the hard way, but coming out the other side knowing that you shouldn't do those things again because it's probably not gonna be a good idea.
Yeah, I wish I could remember. I want to credit her, but I can't remember the author's name at the moment. But one of the cookbooks I was reading, that's like a teaching cookbook, is meant to like not just be like here's recipes, but like here's how the science of food works. She had a really good thing about like you literally can't get good at this if you don't make some inedible garbage. Like it needs to happen, and like every great chef or like great cook in your life has made complete trash, has made the dubious food from Breath of the Wild, basically. Like you have to do that, and which I guess is true of like any creative thing. Like you have to make trash sometimes. It's the only way to get good. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to making more garbage food in the future.
You're welcome in that. I'm again, from experience, that is a wild thing to say, but also relatable. Um, now, Ryan, as I said, I do wanna work you towards the door. I do wanna turn on the lights and let you get out. However, before
Should we
you
have been
go, I
doing
do
this in
wanna
the
hit you
dark?
up. Um,
I can turn
you
lights
mean
off
you
if that. I didn't know that's how you guys rolled around here. If you want this to be like a sensory deprivation kind of podcast experience, I didn't. Oh God, I didn't get the notes. Okay, it's fine. I'll just
have
close
you
my
not
eyes
been
for the
wearing a
rest of the show.
Okay, okay, I was gonna say, did I forget to mention it was time to put the blindfold on? Hold on, let me take a peek. Oh, so I just looked. I The notes I've been taking are just scribbles. So maybe the blindfold was a bad idea. Maybe the light should have been on the whole time. Um,
Lessons for
but
next time.
lessons for next time. Like cooking, you gotta drop a few eggs on the floor to know that's not where they belong. Um, but Ryan, as I was saying, I do want to work towards letting you go, getting you out of here, so that way you can enjoy your evening, you can relax, you can go and hopefully not make some more dubious food for you and your wife. But before that, I'm wondering if you would mind if I hit you with some lightning round questions.
Yes, please. I love a lightning round. I don't know what that
Awesome.
means other than fast, but like let's roll.
Awesome. So, as I said before we started recording, that these are lighthearted, nonsensical, and quite random. So, by all means, there's no judgment. These are just, as I said, they're random, and you can answer them however you see fit. And as I also said before we started recording, that there's one that I just absolutely love asking, and like I, I'm well aware that it's kind of like a mushed horse at this point, but I really don't care because I love it. So, which video game character do you think would most likely want uppies from a goth dummy mom?
Ooh, I see why you struggle to let go of that bad boy. That's good stuff. Um, Honestly, top of my head, I think Steiner from Final Fantasy IX, the guy in the big clanky armor, because he's a big chunker, and I bet he doesn't get uppies very often. And
You know, that's
you game recognized game, you can just kind of tell another goth lady appreciator when you see one, and I think he's got some of that in the mix. I would put money on it. Also,
so
Crash Bandicoot.
thank you. I appreciate the logic for Steiner, and Crash is a crazy boy, 100%, right? Like he's definitely gonna want uppies from a goth dummy mommy, right?
That's what that game is about. I'm pretty sure. I never played any of those, but that's my understanding. Is it's very uppies goth forward platformer.
I'm now realizing that that's probably a pitch that no one's ever made, but is probably sitting in the perfect place to be the perfect game, you
Get
know?
on it, Naughty Dog.
Um, I think it'd be Toys for Bob at this point, actually, but, Naughty Dog can jump in there too. They can take a crack at it again.
It's not too late to get the license back.
Um, which video game character do you think takes the term yard sale literally?
Ooh, uh, Gale from Baldur's Gate 3.
Would you like to elaborate or nah, that's good. You're
No,
good.
no, I won't
Fair
be
enough.
elaborating at all.
Sometimes I'm
If you know, you
compelled
know.
to ask. Thank you. You know. Sometimes I'm compelled to ask, and then sometimes I'm like, I'll just leave it. But that one I felt like seeing if you
Pretty,
had more to
pretty
put, but that works.
self-explanatory,
Thank
I
you.
feel.
Um, Now, because you mentioned Baldur's Gate 3, I've not asked this one before. However, you know, I'm gonna. We'll see how it goes. Do you think a transmorphing druid could provide eggs for their adventuring party's breakfast?
Absolutely think that they can do that. I think it is wildly unethical in a way that I'm not prepared philosophically to delve into. But I feel like if it's not cannibalism, it like lovingly brushes up against cannibalism in a way that is a real challenge for me.
So, Ryan, thank you. As I said, I've not asked that one before. However, I am happy that it did not just crash and burn immediately and that
I'm
actually does
real
seem to have some legs.
I'm stoked. You got to keep no, you got to keep that one in the mix. That should be you should lead with that because I'm not doing a bit. I know I'm a big clown and that's been kind of my whole thing on the show so far. I'm going to think about that all the rest of the week. Like is it can do the eggs go back to do the eggs transform back if not eaten when the druid transforms back? Are they part of them? And if so, what do the eggs turn back into? When the druid turns back into a tiefling or a human or a halfling or whatever. What if the druid becomes a chicken? Do they make chicken eggs? And then, therefore, when you eat those, like this is really this is like the great thinkers of history would really struggle. I feel like Socrates would really have to like chew on this one. I think you've got you've got something hot here, and you need to deploy it on everybody who comes on the show going forward. And then I need to meet all those people, and while we're both like flop sweating and like we haven't slept in weeks, and be like, did they ask you the egg thing? Like, yeah, they asked me the egg thing. Okay, so what the hell? And then we can like have a support group. This is like watching the Ring tape. What you've done to me.
um, so I you're welcome. I am happy to hear that. It's I take a weird perverse joy in knowing that some of my questions are going to be the kind of questions that, in this case, I'm going to make the presumption that your wife is going to be laying in bed at 3 a.m. just going, please stop. I don't care. As you are trying to figure it out and pontificating on it all through the night an exhausted, wild-eyed mess. So thank you for letting me know that that is how I can picture you moving forward for the next week or so.
100% with the caveat that my wife actually plays in the D&D group that I run, and she's likely to have far more disgusting opinions about that question than I do. So, if anything, I will be telling her to shut it while I try to sleep.
Or you'll just both be feeding off of each other and it'll just be a real nightmare.
100%.
Um, but no, Ryan, actually, I'm going to hit you with one more, just on the sense of philosophical nonsense. Which video game character do you feel is most perturbed by the idea of the heat death of the universe?
That's good stuff. I want to say Morlun or Morden. Pardon me. I'm mixing up Spider-Man and Mass Effect. Common problem for me. The scientist guy from Mass Effect 2. But I don't think he's troubled by it. I think he probably has calculated exactly when it's going to happen. And he's like, yeah, big deal. So let me think about this. This is this is challenging. Probably gotta go Crash again. I'm sorry, but like we've all played Crash Bandicoot, especially me. Don't listen to the earlier part of the episode. We all know he's like a philosophically minded character who probably thinks about like, you know, when the universe no longer has energy in it and it shrinks back, like what happens to crates? What happens to mangoes? What is all this even for? It's not stated like overtly in those games, but if you've even watched like Let's Play footage, you can tell that like while he's doing whatever you do in a Crash Bandicoot, again, I've never played one, he's definitely thinking about that. Like they animated him in a way where that's weighing on him. Like you can tell the way that a good stage actor can portray like anxiety or fear or, you know, dread without having to say anything just by the way they kind of walk. Like Crash Bandicoot be thinking about the dark space after the universe has breathed its last breath. Like that could not be more obvious. Do you know what I'm talking? Do you know what I mean? Are you happy you asked this? Do you feel good about it?
Yeah, look, as I said, I feel a perverse sense of joy whenever one of my questions does something like this. So yeah, I'm 100% happy that I threw that one out there
Can I double
last
flip it
minute.
back?
That one
Is it
actually,
is it rude? I'm sorry to interrupt, but like, can I double flip it back on you and be like, what? Who do you have an answer to your own lightning round question to that last one?
for you know, I don't, because I'm not gonna lie. You know the questions where it's like, would you rather fight 100 horse-sized or one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses or whatever, whatever.
Right.
Um, I that question is one that I concocted while I worked someplace that used to do town halls, and they were dumb enough to do open mics to people that were there. And I threw out there the, how many toddlers do you think you could take down in a fight before you like were overwhelmed by of course the people that I asked that, one of them was a German, and he's like, I don't understand the question because it's German. But the other guy was like, no, I got you. He's like, I have a 2-year-old. I think I could take 33 of these before I get overwhelmed, right? But like they were dumb enough to keep that open. And that was a question that I concocted with of um, no sense of even wanting to explore it, just because I personally have just accepted that
Yeah.
that's just the end, that's the thing. And it was one of those things where I just liked watching people try to understand what was asked, because many of them had never considered the fact that not just everyone that they've known and loved or whatever will die, that everything that they can possibly conceive will die. They've never, like, there are people who have never considered that. So that question was one of those things that I would throw out there and just watch someone on a stage, on a web conference, in front of like 400 people have to suddenly have like an existential crisis of going, everything I know and can conceive is going to be dead one day. And, so personally, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer. For me, it was always putting someone in the
Yeah.
position to have to sit and acknowledge this.
No, this is great. This is quite frankly a way darker response than I could have ever imagined because uh, real supervillain stuff here, everybody. Because it's like I don't need to answer it. What I live for is watching the light leave somebody's eyes when they realize that every molecule of everyone and everything around them will cease to be someday. That's what does it for me. There's no reason to answer this question because it's pointless for me to answer it when that's what I'm here for. If you roll a flashbang under somebody's door, you don't miss it. You're like, man, I wish I still had that. Like the point is, it it's their problem now. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of perverse puppet master joy to be had, is what I'm hearing. You've given me a lot to think about. Maybe
Yeah,
forever.
I've I'm thank you. I'm glad that that's how you've taken it. I have spoken with someone before, and they had a very honest question because they didn't know if the wholesome questions and the way that I phrase myself is because I'm a wholesome person. And to them, I said, I've been on the internet since I've been 12. That's not a possible thing, right?
Yeah.
but that was
No one
a
gets
thing
out
that we
alive.
shared in we shared that in private, though. So, like, I am happy, that, I had a chance to really get out in front of this and say, "No, I'm secretly a villain that just did not have the means, to be a villain." But the motive and the enjoyment of it has always been there.
Well, I have to say, you mask your megalomania extremely well.
Thank you. I do my best. Um, Ryan, Um, as I said before we started down whatever this is, I wanted to work you towards the door, let you get on with your evening, let you go and make dinner for you and your wife. Um,
It's too late. Okay, you did the thing with the end of the universe and the heat death. You did the thing with the druid eggs. There's no there's no evening for me. There's no chilling and making dinner. There's no putting Vivaldi on and swirling a brandy snifter and being a man of culture. It's over. I'm gonna think about the druid eggs while I lay on the floor with like in pajamas if I can get the energy to get them on around the amount of my brain power that's being used by that question. Like it doesn't matter. So you take all the time you want. My evening ended when you asked me that. There's nothing for me.
you're welcome. Thank you for letting me know that I have achieved that. I am proud of myself in ways that you can never fully
The
understand or
power you
even
wield
grasp.
is really terrifying, and I just hope you understand that. Like you're charming, polite, like soft-spoken Canadian demeanor hides true monsterism in there somewhere. And that's cool. You don't run into that very often on like a chill casual chat show like this.
Thank you for recognizing the game. That's pretty much all I can say. But Ryan, in all honesty, in all seriousness, I did want to let you get on if you're evening. I wanted to let you relax. However, if there was anything else you want to discuss, a cool game, what you're working on, or something you feel more people should just be more aware of, by all means, the floor is yours. As well, in the same vein or the same breath, even, please let everyone know where they can find more information about you, which I'll also include in the episode description.
Sure. I suppose like the thing I would plug, I can't talk about publicly the things I'm working on professionally at the moment. Um, I would just say like if you haven't played Expedition 33 yet, if you think you're on the fence about it, if you think you don't really like turn-based RPGs, like that's one of my favorite games that's come out in the last like decade and a half. It was really surprising, and I'm not somebody who likes turn-based RPGs these days. I find the kind of turn-based combat kind of boring. This game fixes it. The story's incredible. The music is some of the best I've heard. I want more people to play that, and plenty of people played it. But if somebody hears this who's like, I don't know if that's for me, like it's really good and it's really surprising, and they haven't played anything like it. So weird to plug somebody else's stuff. I don't make a commission off of that. I just think it's a good game. And then as for where you can find me, I have accidental, really good SEO. I didn't do it. I wish I was smart enough to have done it. But if you Google Ryan Ike, I'm the me that comes up. So that's an easy way to find my website, my Spotify, my social media. But if you want more specifics, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Ryan Ike Audio. On Instagram, I do sort of like text posts talking about how to work in the game industry sustainably, how to work as a creative professional sustainably, both on the emotional and the financial side of it. And then on both platforms, I do kind of short video content, just kind of talking about music theory and musical mechanics in games. And then yeah, you can find me on any platform I'm on, like Spotify, my website, or those social media spaces by just Googling it. I know that sounds bad, but it's just the easiest way. And I come up. If you see the most nearsighted person you've ever seen, that's me. You did it.
So, Ryan, thank you for the visual aid, if you will, for how people can confirm they found the right guy.
Oh, they'll know.
Um, but no, but thank you. I will 100% be sure to also put all of those links in in the episode description. So that way, if people do have really crappy Google capabilities, even if the SEO is great, not to speak against it, but I suck at Google, shockingly, as a programmer. Um,
Well, it's getting worse and worse all the time too.
yes, it's I was bad before, now I'm just scared. Is the short and long of it. But I'll definitely include that as well, so that way no one has to worry about whether the AI is hallucinating and throwing them to some random person named, Brendan Fraser dressed as a Mountie.
No, that's me. If they find that, they found me. That's correct.
Yours will just have the most nearsighted identifier that ever existed at the same time. Um, but no, but Ryan, that is it. Thank you so much. I'm not going to bug you about anything else. I'm going to let you get on with your evening. Um, but yeah, so if there wasn't anything else, I will shut up. I'll turn the lights on and I'll let you go and enjoy your evening and relax.
Yeah, I hope you have a good evening too. And again, this was a really good time. It's nice to just be on a show where it's just kind of a chill, casual chat about games we like. Uh, that doesn't happen to me a ton, and so I appreciate it. And it was I'm very happy to be here.
So thank you, Ryan. I'm glad that you enjoyed yourself. I'm glad that, not to phrase this in the weirdest way possible, but I'm glad that like you enjoyed the opportunity to just talk about games and not have to worry about trying to plug something or what have you. Because that's pretty much what the podcast is about. I said early on that I'm kind of like a dog chasing a car. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do, but like I'm just happy to chase the car. I'm just happy to have you here and ask you silly questions and see where they go. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for participating and playing in this space that at times was absolutely nonsense.
Thanks for having me.
So thanks again to Ryan for making time to have this conversation with me, and thank you for joining us on the Red Tunic podcast, as well as a special thanks to Ron Jenkins for the use of music from the title track from Roads Deep. Be sure to check out the episode descriptions for links to socials, websites, and other means that will allow you to learn more about or support Ryan and the podcast. While you're doing that, share, like, follow, and whatever else you think makes the algorithm work. Thanks. Till next time.